This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. This might be my favorite hot take of this week. I'm going to call it Trumpocalypse January style. This is the month of January for Donald Trump based on the calendar events that are coming up in all of the cases against him. Civil, criminal, the attempts to keep him off the ballot, civil fraud case to take away his business empire, defamation cases, and the like. All of it, all compressed, all coming to a head, chickens all coming home to roost in January. Let's kick it off. Let's start with the civil fraud case people have now forgotten about because it's over 2 weeks since the close of evidence. We're going to final briefing and oral argument, closing argument in the what I think is a $500 million to $750 million civil fraud case brought by the New York Attorney General against Donald Trump, all his companies, and all the executives, including many that have Donald Trump's last name. That is now come. Evidence is closed. Witnesses are done. Experts have been scoffed at by Judge Engoron, and now he's allowing final briefing. Remember, there's been 5 attempts by Donald Trump to get the case dismissed on a directed judgment, all rejected. Last attempt, let's go with the final set of briefing on the 5th of January with an oral argument or closing argument to be heard. We'll cover it here on the MeidasTouch Network on the 11th of January. But that's not all that Donald Trump has to focus on. Whether after the 11th of January, sometime in the rest of the month of January, Judge Engoron issues his ruling about whether there is persistent fraud in the operation of Donald Trump's businesses. Therefore, he's able to completely eradicate those businesses, dissolve them, put them out of business, take $750 million or so away from Donald Trump, should he have it, and also ban and bar Donald Trump and his executives and family from ever serving in office again as an officer or director, not allowing them to transact business in New York, take out bank loans, sell real estate, and the like. That's what's up for grabs with a ruling by Judge Engoron, which we expect during the 2nd or 3rd week of January. Hold that on the calendar. Now, let's move on to the oral argument and the decision-making around whether Donald Trump can claim presidential immunity to have his criminal case dismissed in the District of Columbia and ultimately have impact maybe even as far as the Georgia prosecution. What's happening there? January the 8th, right in the middle of the briefing in the civil fraud case and the oral argument in the civil fraud case, Donald Trump's lawyers, and they overlap, it's almost the same group of lawyers, are going to have to get ready for oral argument on a fully briefed issue before the D.C. Court of Appeals as to whether Donald Trump has presidential immunity or not. After that's over, we expect a ruling within 72 hours based on the velocity at which the D.C. Court of Appeals is focused on this case and the need to keep the March trial of criminal trial of Donald Trump on track. So by I would say the 11th or 12th of January, there's going to be an attempt to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. They're going to decide on writ of certiorari during the month of January. Briefing and oral argument could happen in January as well, just as the civil fraud case ruling taking away $500 million or more comes out in New York. But we're not done, because while we have all of that going on, there is a trial that Donald Trump's going to be on in the middle of all this. He doesn't just get to sit home and do social media. He's going to have to put on a suit and tie and maybe even pants and show up in a courtroom in New York, in the federal courthouse, Southern District, New York, in a case presided over by Judge Kaplan. It's the E. Jean Carroll case all over again. She already beat Donald Trump and was vindicated in May of this past summer in a case in which it was proven by a jury in New York that Donald Trump raped or sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll in 1996, and that jury awarded her $5.5 million. Now, a new jury is going to determine if Donald Trump, in his comments that are very, very similar, identical, caused her substantial damage when he was president of the United States. The last trial was about comments he made when he was not president of the United States, but the judges already ruled that these comments are defamatory about her, and the Second Circuit Court of Appeals has already rejected Donald Trump's efforts to have immunity, back to immunity, to declare that he has immunity from any kind of civil case, because they say that, first of all, you were too late you filed your immunity defense 3 years into the case. That's about 2.5 years too late. And that's because of Alina Habba, and sent him packing. But even underlying that, based on some recent decisions, including the Blassingame case down in the District of Columbia, is unlikely that Donald Trump would be able to argue that in defaming E. Jean Carroll as mercilessly as he did, it somehow fell within the inner perimeter of his official duties as president in order for him to be immunized. So let's put that aside, because the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, the highest court for appellate work in New York Federal, has already told Donald Trump, you've lost on appeal, and we're not staying the case, and you go to trial on January the 16th. So just keeping track of things, the 5th of January, he's got to fully brief the civil fraud case. The 11th of January, closing argument in the civil fraud case against Trump and all of his companies. He goes to trial on the 16th of January. He's in oral argument about immunity, right, to have the case dismissed, the indictment dismissed against him between the 8th and the 12th of January. And then the Supreme Court of the United States has to decide. I'm already breathless. The Supreme Court of the United States has to decide, probably likely at the back end of January, maybe the beginning of February, on their own appeal decision, whether Donald Trump has immunity from criminal prosecution, because he used to be the president of the United States. Whew, now that's January. And I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to tell you how difficult for a already struggling team of lawyers for Donald Trump. This is not the all-star game of lawyers. I'm sorry to comment on other lawyers this way, but these are people that are outmatched, outwitted, out-resourced, out-thought, out-prepared at every angle by whoever they're up against, the New York Attorney General and the 30 lawyers at the New York Attorney General, plus investigators and staff, outmatched. Jack Smith and the special counsel's team and the several hundred people that are devoted to that prosecution, including 15 or 20 line prosecutors working for Jack Smith. You have that there, right? Then you've got Robbie Kaplan, lawyer extraordinaire, friend of the show, been on our podcast before, who's handling many cases against Donald Trump in one way or the other, but is handling the E. Jean Carroll case, and she already beat him once. And Robbie Kaplan has a stellar track record of unbroken victories against Donald Trump and at major high-stakes cases. So you've got Robbie Kaplan's team. Any one of these teams against Donald Trump's Chris Keiss in his two-man or two-person law firm, Todd Blanche, who we haven't really seen in a long time, and his two-person law firm. I'm not being cruel. I'm being accurate. Alina Habba and her 4-person shop out in Jersey off the 19th hole of the Trump golf course. Okay. I mean, these are the people. John Lauro and his 4-person law firm down in Florida. I mean, to say that they are being stretched thin would be an understatement and an insult to thinness. I mean, this is, I can't tip my hat to them. I'm amazed that they are able to even keep up at all. I mean, they're always coming in last in every race against the resources that I just identified. The fact they even show up every day is amazing to me, and take the punishment they take. And that's why we're seeing, ridiculous motions being filed with wrongly analyzed and improperly researched. It's because, how many people can they throw on this? Sure, all the Trump lawyers around that aren't indicted, that aren't disbarred, that still have a law license are doing research for him, I guess, But that's the matchup. So it's not just dates on a calendar, right? The ones I've talked about here, the January 5, January 11, January 8, January 12, January 16, January 30. It's not just those dates. It's the people behind those dates and the judges behind those dates, right? You've got Judge Engoron, who Donald Trump has been attacking mercilessly, and his staff and his wife and everybody else, leading to doxing and violent rhetoric. Judge Engoron, who's focused like a laser beam on making the civil fraud decision. He's already ruled once that Donald Trump committed persistent fraud with his companies. He's already installed a financial monitor in the form of a former federal judge for the last year and a half to oversee those businesses because of the persistent fraud. Now he's going to rule on 5 more counts of persistent fraud and the remedy. What do you do about it? That's Judge Engoron and all of his staff against Donald Trump, if you will, or at least in favor of justice. You got Judge Chutkan down in the District of Columbia. Her case has stayed, but her work, her opinions live on in the appellate process. You got Judge Pan and Judge Childs, at least in the 3-judge panel of the D.C. Court of Appeals, both of which have heard many Jan 6 cases already, and I'm sure have formed opinions. You've got the United States Supreme Court and all of its staff and personnel, right? And led, hopefully, by John Roberts to the right conclusion. And you've got Judge Kaplan, who's already issued ruling after ruling after ruling against Donald Trump because of the screw-ups of Alina Habba that live on to this moment. So that's the whole sort of cast of characters against which you've got John Lauro and a couple of people, Chris Keiss and a couple of people, Todd Blanche and a couple of people, Alina Habba and a couple of people. I mean, I've worked in 2,000 lawyer firms, 2,000 lawyer firms with 2,000 support staff. They would be hard-pressed to represent a client in all of the things I just said. They would do it. They'd do it masterfully with people, working round the clock. I can't tell you how many 24-hour days I put in as a young associate at one of the major firms in New York when I started my career. That's why they have a shower and a cot in these big firms for people to sleep for a couple hours and get back to writing the briefs. They would be hard-pressed, but would do a masterful job, my old firm, if they had a client that had all these matters. This group, this virtual law firm that's been shotgun thrown together by Donald Trump, no way. And that's why we're able to criticize their lawyering, their legal work, and why it's so poor and intellectually barren, is because you see this mismatch that Donald Trump has created because nobody wants to represent Donald Trump. No legitimate law firm is representing Donald Trump. Let me say it again. No legitimate law firm is representing Donald Trump. And we have hundreds and hundreds, 1,000 legitimate law firms. The American Lawyer ranks law firms every year. They call it the top 200, the AmLaw 200, the AmLaw 50, the AmLaw 10. I've worked in firms that are in the AmLaw 3, top 3 in the country, top 10, top 50, right? These are firms that have 1,000 lawyers plus, at least 700 lawyers plus to even get into the top 200. I just identified for you a law firm effectively for Donald Trump that's about 14 people. Okay? So, listen, God love him, but this isn't working. And the reason for this mismatch is nobody would touch Donald Trump with a 10-foot pole. We'll continue to track. That was January. Now that I've mapped it out, we got to follow it. We got to analyze it, deep dive it, drill down on it. We only do that one place, right here. MeidasTouch, YouTube, and on hot takes like this one. Free subscribe. No outside investors from MeidasTouch Network. You are the network you've been looking for. And you can help by using your thumbs and your fingers, free subscribe. Help them get to 2 million free subscribers. Hot takes. If you like them, give me a thumbs up. It helps keep me on the air. It keeps these hot takes coming to you on a regular basis. And then we pull it all together and curate a podcast we call the Legal AF Pod. It's exactly what you think. Karen Friedman Agnifilo on one hand. Me and Ben Mysalis on the other. We get together on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We got so much to talk about. We got to cut out things. We curate it for you so you know what's going on at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Thanks so much for watching. We're only a few subscribers short of 2 million subs. Please subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel for free and help us grow this unapologetically pro-democracy network.